a memches amid base, and we have we're in the middle of the Gemara. It's talking about when you have a connection between two vessels, and the two vessels are connected temporarily for some function, whether they count as a connection, where usually we say that two items that are tamei, two items that are separate, two vessels, one cannot make the other tamei because a vessel does not make another vessel tamei, yet their connection is going to mean that when one of them becomes tamei, the other becomes tamei because of the connection. So the Gemara says, Tana Rabbana. This is about 6-7 lines from the bottom of Memches on base 48b. Tana Rabbana mispore shel parakim. You have a scissors that's made of parts that comes apart and goes and gets put together. The izemel sharihitani, and a plane, which is the blade that will smoothen out, that will make a piece of wood smooth. You make it straight that way. So chibur l'tuma, that's a connection for tuma that since they function together, if one part becomes tummy, the other becomes tummy. But they are not a connection in regards to the becoming tahor, the purification process, which means that you have to spritz something on it. You have to spritz a red heifer water on it. That's not going to be a connection. So Gemara says, Manavshach, which one is it? If it's actually connected.
Wait, so the blade on the plane versus the plane, is that the idea?
Well, there's two parts to it, and it seems like it would be the blade that was switched out in the plane itself. So
right, but I'm saying there are two parts. There's one is a blade, and one is the part that you hold and push, right?
But they're together.
But
right?
they're together. They're connected.
That's right.
So if the blade got tamei, that doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of it got tamei. Is that? It does mean that the rest of it would be tamei.
It is a chibur. Chibur l'tuma. It is a connection. It's just not a connection in the tahara process, in the purification process. So Gemara says, which one is it? Manavshach. If it's one vessel, so then even for spritzing, if it's not a connection, then even for tuma it's not a connection. Amar Rabba. So Rabba said, the truth is the Torah b'shas malacha chibur bein l'tuma bein la'azah shalei b'shas malacha ein chibur lo l'tuma v'lo la'azah. As we saw yesterday, there's a distinction during the use of that connection. It's a connection, and not during the use, it's not. So while you're using the scissors is the two parts are connected. When you're not using it and it comes apart, so then they're two different pieces, and then they're not connected. When you're working on your wood, so then the plain two parts are one. When you're not working on it, it's just two separate pieces, both for its tuma process and the purification process. However, Gazra Abanan al Tuma Shalom B'Shas Malacha Mishum Tuma Shabashas Malacha. The Chachamim made an enactment and said, even though that it's not connected, and therefore only one part, the part that touched the tuma, will become tamei. So you have the two parts of the scissors, they come apart. They're not going to be tamei. Only the part that touched the tuma is going to become tamei, but the other part's not going to be tamei. However, Chachamim said we're going to consider both parts tamei because people consider it one, because part of the time it's one. And it actually is one while you're using it as one, as a single vessel. So now that it's two separate parts, but people consider it as one vessel, we're going to say the tuma applies as if it's one vessel. However, since the spritzing on it, the purification process, has to be each one separately, and therefore, when you're not working with it, and they're two separate pieces. You have to spritz on one and then spritz on the other in order to make sure that people know this, and because in people's mind, it's always one vessel. People won't realize that it's considered two. So the Chachamim said you always need to spritz both parts so that people will not make a mistake and consider it as one. So that's it's a rabbinic enactment to make it consistent in both ends.
I have a question.
Sure.
How difficult was it to get something purified that became tamei? I mean, obviously they didn't give everybody a spritz bottle with
it depended on what kind of tumah, obviously. So if it just needed to go to the mikveh, that was easy. Some tumahs you just have to take something to the mikveh. If it needed to be spritzed, that was always done by the kohen. So it had to be. There was a process of taking it to Beis HaMikdash or taking it to the kohen to spritz it.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, what they had to get spritzed on the third and the seventh day. Well, so what happens if somebody lives in the Galil? They're sitting shiva the whole week. How are they going to get there? I mean, we have Pesach Sheni for people who couldn't get there, but if you miss the third and the seventh, you're out of luck, right?
Well, you have to just go through that process at some point. At some point, you have to be spritzed 3 and 7.
So if it was, let's say it's Kislev, you'd have to be Tamei Meis until Nisan, until you got to the Beis HaMikdash for Pesach.
I don't know that to be the case. I don't know if they didn't have access for someone there. I don't know. It's a good question. I'd have to check. I don't remember the answer to that. If people did not remain tummy maze, they had to. They as soon as possible would go and do the Tahara process, because otherwise everything they touched, there was so many things that
right.
Yeah. So back to our Mishnah. So the Mishnah had said that there were certain things that when they're wet conduct the tumah, conduct heat, and therefore you cannot insulate anything before Shabbos in something like this. And if they're dry, they don't add to the heat. They don't conduct any heat, and therefore it's going to be okay to insulate. What kind of wet are we talking about? That this is moist. We had hay, we had zagin, seeds. Are we talking about their own moisture that they hadn't dried out yet? Or we're talking about even if you add other moisture to it, so they became wet from something else, it'll also count as a conductor of heat and adding heat, and you're not allowed to insulate with that. Tashama, lo b'tevim v'lo b'zagin v'lo b'mochin v'lo b'asovim b'zman she'en lachin. It says not in hay, seeds, shmatas, or grass. Anything. Sorry. Or grass, b'zman she'en lachin, if they are wet. Now, I know tevin, hay, or straw can have its own moisture because when it was growing, it had moisture in it. Zagin seeds can have that, and grass can have that. But mochin are shmatas; they're pieces of cloth. Where are you going to have moisture inherently in that? Now, so if our Mishnah talk about even if it's moist because of something else, shaper, okay. But if you're talking about that they have their own moisture, where do you have in a piece of cloth that it has its own moisture? So on the underside of sheep, all the wool is always wet. And it's talking about that he made a garment, he made a piece of cloth out of that wool. which really is always moist. So at first, the Gemara thinks that it's not even a cloth; it's just a piece of the shearings of the wool. Gemara says, "What about a brisa that Rabbi Yeshaya said, which may or may not disagree with the next Mishnah?" There's a whole discussion about that. The Mishnah we're about to see, where we say, that you're allowed to use a dry piece of cloth for the insulating. And with a dry fruit, and produce over here means that's appropriate to insulate in. So it could be grains, it could be legumes. So you some sort of produce that are dry you can use for insulating. But not in produce that's moist or garments or piece of cloth that's moist. If it's talking about that it has inherent moisture, well, how can that be? Must be that's talking about that even if it has an external moisture. So Gemara says no. Even if it's a cloth, because it says ksus, which is a garment, so even a cloth made out of that particular wool coming from the underbelly of the sheep, which does have which is very wet, and that's going to count as an inherent moisture. Nevertheless, the halacha is that indeed any type of moisture on these materials will be considered conducting heat, and you're not allowed to use them as an insulator. The Mishnah says, "Terminim mixus operas ubekamfa yona minasora shel charashim and uras shel pishtan daka." So you're allowed to insulate in garments, in produce, which we just mentioned would be either beans or grains. And bekamfa yona with dove wings, minasora shel charashim, and in wood shavings, and in flax shavings, if you would. So while in the process of making linen, you're at the flax strands process stage. Daka, as long as they are thin, but not if they are thick. Rabbi Yehuda says it's only prohibited when it's thick, when it's thin, but not when they are thick. He permits it if it's thick. Well, the Gemara is going to ask us about that. So, and at first, the Gemara says is going to talk about this kanfei yona, dove wings. The Gemara tells us a story in regards to tefillin. So, Amar Rabbi Yana said, "Tefillin tzricha guf naki." In order to wear tefillin, it's required to have a guf naki, a clean body. Kalisha bal kanafayim, as clean as Elisha bal kanafayim, meaning that he was very particular and careful, and as such miracles happened to him. We'll see the story. So what does it mean to have a clean body? As Abaye says, not to pass gas. Rava Amar Shalai Yishamem. Rava says not to fall asleep in them. My Kollel about kanafayim. So Gemara is going to tell us a story why it's called that way. There's more to this as well, as we've seen. The halacha is that one needs to be mindful of the tefillin they're wearing the entire time that they're wearing the tefillin. And it is because of this that Tues and the Ramah and the Shulchan Aruch and others say that we limit the amount of tefillin we wear that to the minimum obligation, which is once a day during davening, because for the majority of people it is difficult to maintain both a spiritual, mental, and a physical focused body for tefillin. And so why do we call Elisha a master of the wings? Zer al Yisrael, the evil Roman Empire made a decree against the Jews. They would brutally murder anybody that was wearing tefillin. But Elisha was defiant, and he would not only wear them, but he would walk out in the market that way. And a Roman soldier saw him. So he ran away from him. The soldier ran after him. When he came to him, at that point he had taken the tefillin off of his head, and he had them in his hand. And he had them in his hand. He says, what do you have in your hand? He says, I have dove wings. Pasha is he opened his head, and indeed it was dove wings. Now that's a cool trick. See, it was called Bal Knafayim. Well, this is nice, but what's the connection to dove wing? And Mishar, first, why more than other animals? Because in the metaphors of the psukim, Bnei Yisrael are considered the dove. Shenemar says, like dove wings that are silver, that are plated in silver. Just as the dove's wings protect it. Af Yisrael, mitzvahs maginas aleim, so too Yisrael, the mitzvahs protect them. At the end of brachas, we saw this already. And Rashi says it's a protection from other creatures it has. Tues says that there's that it in the way it flies, its wings protect it, because when it gets tired, it can lean on one side versus just needing to rest. Back to the Mishnah. So the Mishnah said with wood shavings from a smith and Nura shel Pishtan and flax. What Rabbi Yehuda says that you can use crude larger pieces but not smaller pieces. What's he talking about? The flax, or which was the immediately prior statement, or is he talking about the wood shavings, which is one step before that? Tashama, the Tana Rabbi Yehuda, Emenu Shel Pishtan Daka Reikazevel. Well, look at what Rabbi Yehuda says. We have a brisa. Rabbi Yehuda says that in the urus of Pishtan, daka, that are thin, are like zevel, are like a fertilizer. Shemamina urus of Pishtan kai. So we see that he's talking about thin flax, because that will count as that will count as something that conducts heat, and you can't use it. The next Mishnah is going to give us another list of things that we can insulate in. So, Tominim b'shlochin, you can use hides, leather, to insulate, even though that this is something that typically you would want to use for commerce, and as such, it should be muktzah. But it's not muktzah because people lean on it. People use it as a mat to lean on. Matalton, I say, and therefore you're allowed to move it. Also, it's not a muktzah. Begizet Samer, you can insulate in shearings of wool, even though that it's part of commerce. However, you're not allowed to handle it. And as we saw earlier in the Gemara, and we'll see again soon, the discussion of whether if you use it for that Shabbos, whether you're allowed to handle it that Shabbos, or it remains muksa because you still want to use it for commerce. You want to use it for making a garment. So what do you do? So since it's muksa, so what are you going to do? You take off the lid, and then they're going to fall off to the side. So you have a whole bunch of shearings around the box that your hot pot is in, and then you insulate the top as well with the wool shearings. So how do you get the pot out? So you take the lid, and when you take the lid off, it'll fall off on its own. And this is sort of what we were talking about about a week ago about tiltul min hatzad. If you're indirectly taking something. So you're picking up the pot and the wool that's on it is falling off. So that's a tiltul min hatzad. No, you can't do that. Rather, what you do is you lean the entire box on its side. And the box has both muksa and non-muksa item in it. The main item in there is the pot. You take that shemayito, and the concern is maybe what's going to happen is if you take out the pot, the wool on the sides are going to collapse, and you won't be able to put it back in on Shabbos. Chachamim say, no, you can take it and put it back, and we'll see about that in the Gemara. Now, Rashi points out over here that how can you take the pot lid off of the pot while the shearings are on it? If the shearings are on it, it's a basis l'davar ha'aser. As we talked about a few days ago, anything that a muksa is sitting on intentionally was placed before Shabbos, that becomes a foundation for the muksa. So here's a fundamental idea in the concept of basis l'davar ha'aser, something that is the base for a muksa. When Rashi said the reason for a basis l'davar ha'aser is that the base becomes a part of the muksa item because it is servicing the muksa. There we was talking about the oil and the wick servicing the flame, so it all really becomes one candle, and therefore it's all muksa. Rashi says that's true where the base is supporting and servicing that which is on it, but over here the shearings or anything that you have insulating even though it's on top of it, it is servicing the pot. It's there before the pot, because of the pot, and as such, it's not a davar aser because it's there to cover the pot. It's there to service the base. You can't call the pot secondary and servicing the wool. It's quite contrary. Even though that the wool is on top, it is servicing the pot itself, and therefore that's not a basis. The pot is not supporting, and the base for the muksa item, the other way around, the muksa item is servicing the pot. Yosef Rabbi Yonasan ben Achinai. Rabbi Yonasan asked Rabbi Yonasan ben Elazar, they were sitting, the Yosef Rabbi Chanina B'chama Gabayu. Rabbi Chanina B'chama was sitting in front of them, and he asked them a question. Shlachin shel balabayis tanan. Our Mishnah that says that you can use hides to insulate. Is it talking about the hides that a homeowner has, and he's not necessarily going to turn it into something? He's not a professional, and he will take it home and use it as a mat, and therefore it's not muksa. Or are we talking about aval shel uman? But if it's of a smith, someone who's a tanner, and his job is to make hides into leather, keep it a cup of the liar. So he must be careful with the pieces of leather. So therefore it is muksa, and you cannot use it on Shabbos. Odilma perhaps shall uman tanan. Or are we talking about of an uman, of a smith, and even his is movable on Shabbos? The koshke shabbos, I'm for sure of a regular homeowner. Well, it's logical that we're talking about only particularly that of a homeowner. Avashal uman, but of a smith, so he's got pieces of leather that he needs to work and turn into something to sell. Kapid alayu, he's going to be strict about it, and he's not going to want to use it for anything else, and therefore it's going to be a muksa. He says, no, this is what Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi said, and we turn to Mem Testament base. Abba Shachahava, my father was a tanner, and he would tell us to go ahead and bring pieces of leather from his shop so that we could go and sit on it. Rashi says this was on a weekday, but he's only proving the concept that they were not particular about it. And Tues says it's talk about on Shabbos. Either way, the idea is that we learn from here that it was they were not particular, and he would bring them to sit on. So we see it was not muksa. Meisave. So we ask a question. Nesarim shal bal bayis metalton osim shal uman ein metalton osim. Pieces of wood that from the lumber maker, if they're homemade, they're from the home. They're allowed to be used because people would sit on them. People would use them for other things. But from the smith, it's going to be prohibited. But if before Shabbos he said, you know what, I'm going to use this as a serving tray for this Shabbos, and then I'll continue working with the wood in my wood shop after Shabbos, so then it's permissible. So even though he wants to use it for commerce, but he's intending before Shabbos to use it as a serving tray to put bread on for guests, that's permissible. Benkach or benkach, either way, metaltalin, you can move them because he intends to use it. Shining a sarm the covenant license. Now don't compare wood to leather. Leather, people are not so particular about. Wood, you serve bread on it and it gets a spill and all of a sudden it's not usable. So people are more concerned that it'll either get a spill, it'll warp, and it'll not be okay. Tashema orishal avudin, bein she'ein avudim. Whether these hides are already been tanned and worked or not, mutal talta b'Shabbos. A lot of movement on Shabbos. Everything okay? A lot of movement on Shabbos. Le'amru avudin elul inin tumah b'vad. We only said that it needs to be that the hides are already worked in regards to tumah because it's not susceptible to tumah unless it's a vessel. So in order for it to be a vessel, it has to be that it's already been in the process of tanning and it's already the end product. But if raw hides are not susceptible to tumah, but in regards to moving it on Shabbos, it doesn't make a difference whether they are in a raw stage or already a fully produced stage. So my lav l'shel shabal bais l'shel shalumin. Since this Bryce is making a distinction between one type of hide and another type of hide, or one halacha and another halacha, it must be that there's no distinction whether it's from a tanner or from a homeowner. No, we're only talking about hides that a common person would have. So the Gemara says, really? On Shabbos, you can only handle it if it's of a common person, but not of a smith, of a tanner. Well, then why don't we say that in the Brisa? Make that distinction. Shel umen mai ematalten ihachi hadatana v'le'amra avudin elalein tuma bavad. If you make a distinction in the Brisa between a finished product hide and a raw hide in regards to tuma, make a distinction within Shabbos itself and say, make that distinction. This that we say that you're allowed to move it on Shabbos, regardless of whether it's raw hide or a fully processed hide. That's only of a homeowner. But if it's of a tanner, then you're not allowed to move it because he still wants to use it for commerce and he won't use it for anything else. So Gemara says, no. Kula b'balabais kamari. We're trying to tell you the chiddush, the new idea, the novel idea in a homeowner itself, that even though that he doesn't use it for commerce, and even though that he's making it himself, and on Shabbos you're allowed to use it regardless of whether it's raw hide or produced hide or processed hide, nevertheless, in regards to tumah, it's not going to be susceptible to tumah unless it's already a vessel, so it's processed. Katani Urish Balabatim, Katanoi Urish Balabatim. When this question that we have of whether you can move hides of a homeowner or even hides of a tanner, we see Balabag Mataltanoisem Shalumanem Mataltanoisem. The first opinion says you cannot move them. Rabbi Yossi Omer, where Rabbi Yossi said, echad zev echad zev metalton, say either way, they're allowed to move them, as we saw Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Yossi said that his father was a tanner and he moved them on Shabbos. Hadi Yasser Keboilu. Well, they were sitting and asking. Chanina Bachama was sitting in front of the two Rabbi Yonassans and he was asking them. So he asked them further. Hadetanan. This that we learned. Avos malachas arbaim chasar achas. That the malachas that are prohibited on Shabbos are 40 minus 1, so the 39. 39 principal malachas of Shabbos. Keneged mi amar. Where's this number come from? What is this number about? So Chanina Bachama keneged avodas hamishkan amaru. Chanina Bachama says it is the work of the Mishkan, meaning that the Torah says at the beginning of Vayakhel, build the Mishkan, but keep Shabbos, which tells us, that juxtaposition tells us that the work of the Mishkan, of building the tabernacle, the Mishkan, means are only to be done on the weekday, and those are the things you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. It tells us that the principal malachas of Shabbos are going to be the things that you do for the Mishkan. Amalu Rabbi Yonasan said, "Kacha Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Yossi ben Lakunya," and he said, "Kenegen melachas melaches Shabbatorah." If you count in the Torah, there are 39. The 39 malachos, 39 times that the Torah says the word malacha, as opposed to avoda, which is work. Malacha is creative work, and it says in the Torah 39 times, and therefore there are 39 malachos. Now, as Tues points out, these are not necessarily disagreeing, they're just two aspects. Which 39 malachos are there? The ones that are in the Mishkan. So Rav Yosef asked, this that it says by Yosef, that when he was working for Potiphar, he came home one day and Potiphar's wife was home and he came to do his work. Is that included or not included? As the Gemara tells us elsewhere, he came to do his work is a machlokas, that he come actually to do housework as he was supposed to, or he came to do his work as a euphemism for having fallen for Potiphar's wife. And he came with the intent of sinning. So there, does that count as a part of it or not? Well, let's just take a Torah and count whether there's 39 or 40, and then we'll know whether it's in there. We actually have that. The Rabbi Bachana said in the name of Rabbi, they actually brought a Torah, and they counted, and they found that there were actually 40, but the question is based on this. But there's another place also that I'm not sure it's included or not. Because in the building of the Mishkan, it also says that there were the work was complete, more than enough, and they stopped the work. So there it says V'hamalacha. Does that mean the work, or does that mean the creative work? So I don't know if that one is counted. So, and that, is it included? And then when it says malachto by Yosef, it means that he just went to do what he needed to do, meaning with the wrong intent. Or does the one by Yosef count? And this is the way it says that it was excess work, means the shalom le'avid, that it was enough. Teku. So with that, we don't have an answer which one it is. And it's interesting that we say that there are 40 minus 1 malachas of Shabbos. That's always, it says, it doesn't say 39 malachas, it says arba'im chasarachas, our 40 minus 1, because in Torah it actually says it 40 times, just one of them doesn't count, and we're not sure which one it is. So we will end with that. We're going to go to Rosh Chodesh davening. Just wanted to say that I'm going to